Shall we start reading? This profounder idea of the worldwide law.
Yeah. Shall I start?
Yes, you can.
This profounder idea of the worldwide law is at the heart of the teaching about works given in the Gita. A spiritual union with the highest by sacrifice, and unreserved self-giving to the eternal is the core of its doctrine. The vulgar conception of sacrifice is an act of painful self-immolation, austere self-mortification, difficult self-effacement. This kind of sacrifice may go even as far as mutilation and self-torture. These things may be temporarily necessary in man's hard endeavor to exceed his natural self. If the egoism in his nature is violent and obstinate, it has to be met sometimes by an answering strong internal repression and counterbalancing violence. But the Gita discourages any excess of violence done to oneself. For the self within is really the Godhead evolving. It is Krishna. It is the divine. It has not to be troubled and tortured as the titans of the world trouble and torture it, but to be increasingly fostered, cherished, luminously open to a divine light and strength and joy and wideness. It is not oneself, but the band of the spirit's inner enemies that we have to discourage, expel, slay upon the altar of the growth of the spirit. These can be ruthlessly excised, whose names are desire, wrath, inequality, greed, attachment to our outward pleasures and pain, a
Radhika,
cohort of,
are you sure you are on the right page?
yes.
1 second.
Yeah, 100.
Okay. Just 1 second. This is this small slight problem for me. Just 1 second. 108. This profounder idea of the, and after that 10. I'm skipping one page. That's why I'm on. It's my fault. Okay. I'm on my. That's why I'm having trouble. Just 1 second. It should be one page at a time. Yeah, it should be here. Just AC power not connected. Having trouble. Just 1 second. I'll get the book. I'm having trouble with my. My new laptop is giving a lot of trouble. Okay. So just 1 second. Yeah, I've got it now. So I'm sorry I interrupted you. So please continue. You have to read from, you were reading, but the Gita discourages. Can we start from there?
Okay.
Okay.
But the Gita discourages any excess of violence done to oneself. For the self within is really the Godhead evolving. It is Krishna. It is the divine. It has not to be troubled and tortured as the titans of the world trouble and torture it, but to be increasingly fostered, cherished, luminously opened to a divine light and strength and joy and wideness. It is not oneself, but the band of the spirit's inner enemies that we have to discourage, expel, slay upon the altar of the growth of the spirit. These can be ruthlessly excised, whose names are desire, wrath, inequality, greed, attachment to outward pleasures and pains, the cohort of usurping demons that are the cause of the soul's errors and sufferings. These should not be regarded not as part of oneself, but as intruders and perverters of ourselves' real and diviner nature. These have to be sacrificed in the harsher sense of the word. Whatever pain in going they may throw by reflection on the consciousness of the seeker.
Yeah. Okay. So 2/3 of a page. So we'll go and look what we say. We'll understand each word. This profounder idea of the worldwide law. So, what is the worldwide law that he is talking about? He is talking about the worldwide law, which is that there is an interconnectedness. Everything is connected with each other. The ego is the biggest falsehood. If you think that you are independent in the world and you can do everything by yourself, and what I am doing is I am doing myself, I am deciding to do this, I am talking, I am eating, I am deciding this. This is absolutely, completely a falsity. It's a falsehood. Why? Because there is a connectedness. You are the smallest element in that, and you are thinking that you are doing everything. It's like a worker thinking that he is the manager, okay, on the floor. So this is the universe is deciding what you are. You are a small unit of the universe, and the universe also is created by the divine. So there are three levels. So level, the transcendent is creating the cosmos, and the cosmos is creating all the forms in the world, including your body, mind, life. The only thing which is not created by the cosmos in you, in the individual, is your soul. The soul is not created. It is eternal. It is coming down and entering into the creation of nature, which is your body, mind, life. Okay. So this is what. So the real truth is, the profounder idea is that everything is connected. To think that I am doing everything, that is absolutely wrong. So this is the profounder idea of the worldwide law, the heart of the teaching of the works given by the Gita. Gita is saying that since everything is connected, you think that you are doing everything, that is wrong. So you have to work in harmony with the rest of the world and the universe. A spiritual union with the highest by sacrifice. So the word sacrifice, he is explaining to you how to interpret correctly and wrongly. Okay. So the spiritual union with the highest, that's the divine, by sacrifice. And what is that sacrifice? He is very clearly saying an unreserved self-giving to the eternal is a core of its doctrine. The unreserved, no, not even holding an iota back. That's very difficult, not easy at all for normal human beings. If you remember Mother's Radha's prayer, okay, Mother's writing, she says that every drop of my blood is given to you. So that should be the attitude. Very, very difficult in the beginning for normal human beings to do that. But it can come slowly. No sacrifice in the beginning, when we are in ignorance, can be perfect. But slowly, slowly, it grows upon you. Then, the vulgar conception of sacrifice. The vulgar, the word is not necessarily pejorative here. It means a common conception, okay, that people usually have. The vulgar conception of sacrifice is an act of painful self-immolation. You hurt yourself, because when you look at yourself, you see so many imperfections, and you are very impatient to get rid of your imperfections. Your impatience also is an imperfection. But you want to get rid of all these things, and so you, how to do? It's like exactly like if you're dealing with a child who is disobedient, there are two ways of handling him. Exactly, you have to handle your own vital and your own body exactly in the same way. You have to Do it gently with what is it called? Persuasion, not by scolding and beating. That doesn't help. So, but still, the common idea is that if I beat the child, he will obey me. Okay, he may through fear, but that's not the real thing. So, exactly in the same way, you have to deal also with your vital and your body. If you hurt them, it won't do. But this hurting is so common, nah? All over the world, wherever. Take the Franciscan monks. Okay, they don't even keep food for the next day. They wear sackcloth. They don't wear soft clothes. Okay, they torture themselves. Okay, there are some people who even lie down on a bed of nails. Why? The energy in the body has to be discouraged from desire. So these are the things that you do, but these are all the wrong ways. It doesn't really work. Sometimes Swami is saying it is very necessary to be harsh with yourself, but not always. Mostly it is by persuasion and slow transformation. If you try with this slapping a child and telling him to obey you, it will not be very effective. Okay? You have to do the same thing with yourself. Then, the vulgar concept of sacrifice is an act of painful self-immolation. To immolate yourself is to hurt yourself. Austere self-mortification. Difficult self-effacement. Your ego has to be effaced, but it is difficult, not easy. Okay, so this is what normally the idea of sacrifice is. This kind of sacrifice may go even as far as self-mutilation and self-torture. You torture yourself. You go on the idea. Even in India, we have the idea of fasting. Okay, let me undertake a fast. Okay, I want to discourage my vital from eating and desires and all that. So you fast. You lock yourself up. You even lie on a bed of nails. All these sort of things, they are absolutely not called for. These things may be temporarily necessary in man's hard endeavor to exceed his natural self. Natural self, your body, mind, life. The word natural always refers to the nature. In Sringo's language, you will always see that. Don't think of the word natural as something very ordinary, very usual, not in that sense. Huh? Natural self, the yourself created by nature, which is your body, mind, life. If the egoism in its nature is violent and obstinate, it has to be met sometimes by an answering strong internal repression and counterbalancing violence. Okay? But this is exception, it's not the rule. Okay? But the Gita discourages any excess of violence done to oneself. For the self within is really the Godhead evolving. It is the divine who is there in you. It is Krishna. It is the divine. It has not to be troubled and tortured as the titans of the world trouble and torture it, but to be increased, fostered, cherished, luminously open to a divine light and strength and joy and wideness. Okay? In just see, fostered and cherished. You have to do the image I gave you about. Yeah, tell me.
But Ranga, this torturing is we are torturing the body, the mind, and the vital. We are not torturing the soul, no?
Yeah, but they are the instruments of the soul. What you're
Yes.
it's an interesting point that you raised, because the same thought also went through my mind. Okay, but they are instruments of the soul. No? So what you're saying is right, but that's not the way to do it. There are better way. Srenda is not saying it doesn't work, but there are better ways. Sometimes you have to do that, he's saying. But that's a rare, that's an exception rather than the rule. Okay? You have to do it by slow persuasion. Okay? In the synthesis, very clearly in other places, he says, not by violence and not by impatience can you get the desired effect. In fact, if you remember, that's exactly what Ramakrishna did. He was so impatient and so violently, he told the Divine Mother, if you don't show yourself to me, I will kill myself. And he took actually a sword and was about to cut his throat when the Divine appeared to him. But Srivendra says he had to pay a price for that. His body used to burn afterwards. So that's not the correct way. Okay? You can maybe get the result, but that won't be the correct way. You have to Exactly like dealing with a child, na? Exactly the same way. You cajole him, explain to him the difficulty, you explain to him why you are asking him not to do something, okay, explain carefully with love, then he is likely to have an effect. So same thing you have to
But
do with your own vital also. Not
Rangada, if how is the soul affected by these tortures? I mean, it is. I mean, how
listen,
do you say? It is eternal. It is away from all. I mean, it's above from all this pain and pleasure. No.
you are making a fundamental mistake, Pallu. When the soul is identified with the body mind life, it is not divine. It's a divine in essence only. The seed is not the tree. Okay? It is in ignorance. It is the soul that is slowly waking up to its own reality. So your idea that even when we are in our ignorance, the soul is absolutely divine within, that's not absolutely correct. It is sleeping. It's in ignorance. Through
That
many,
is
many
the
lives.
psychic being. No. That's the psychic being, not the soul. It's the same thing. One and the same.
One day I explained to you soul and psychic being. Huh? The soul and the psychic being. Psychic being is awake. But how many people have the psychic being? This soul developed is the psychic being. And when the psychic being comes forward, this question of purifying yourself hardly arises because the psychic being itself will purify you. Okay. Now I'll repeat the thing between soul and psychic being. The soul is the divine consciousness which enters into the darkness and the density of matter. Okay, the atom also has got the divine presence in it, but is this divine presence absolutely right in the beginning divine? Essentially it is, but it has gone to sleep. He has gone to sleep. It's an adventure that he is doing himself. He says, I will put myself up in the worst of circumstances and I will find myself again. This is the divine soul and he has gone to sleep, and slowly, because essentially it is divine, it slowly evolves over many lives. And when it has awakened to a sufficient extent, it becomes a psychic being. Make a clear distinction between the soul and the psychic being.
Yeah.
When the psychic being is there, okay, it purifies the being automatically. The soul doesn't purify, it is trying to, but it does not. So the relation between the body, mind, life and the soul is very much there. Okay. In fact, the soul is identifying itself with the body, mind, life wrongly. Don't we all think that we are the body and our vital and our mind? But when you escape from that prison, that is the soul has escaped and it is there, it sees that it is not the body, mind, life. Okay. So this basic idea you have to have very clear. Okay. So
Hello, may I say something?
go ahead.
You know, there is a lot of difference between a psychic presence and a psychic being.
Absolutely.
In the earlier stages of your life as a human, you just have a psychic presence. And over multiple lives, slowly that presence now crystallizes into a psychic being.
That's exactly
And
what I'm
then
saying.
and then only a stage comes when you open to the psychic being.
That's right.
So
But I'll add one thing. Jasmine, I'll add one thing. The psychic presence is already something very developed. Before that, there is no psychic presence even. It is the absence of psychic element at all. It's just this divine soul sleeping. When it is sleeping, it is not. When it is awakened, then it's the psychic presence. Okay, there's an influence of your psychic on you, but you're not conscious of a psychic being. What you said is absolutely correct, but you gave only two stages. You said psychic presence and psychic being. I add one more to begin with. Okay, the psychic absence. It begins from the psychic absence. That is the soul.
but
So
in
there are
humans,
human beings.
in humans we have psychic presence, no?
When you are developed, but when you are not,
No. Presence. Even if it's your 10th or 12th life as a human,
Hmm.
In essence, humans do have a psychic presence compared to an amoeba or a worm.
Okay. But,
So,
but do you think a man in his first human life
hmm.
he has got a psychic presence? Absolutely not.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's what we thought. Psychic being is only in the human beings and not in the amoeba. I mean, there is a divine presence in the immaterial, I mean, in the stone and the animals, but the psychic being is only in the human beings. That's what I thought at least.
No, that's okay. But all human beings don't have the psychic being developed. As I told you, the psychic.
no, not developed.
But it
An
has,
essential presence, not developed.
and that is called the soul.
Okay, Yasmin, what you are saying is a question of nomenclature. It's a question of what you mean by divine psychic presence.
Yes.
I would rather say soul presence. Okay, soul is the one that is divinely. The psychic presence means you are already refined in your sensibilities. That's a psychic presence. Okay, you are refined, and refinement doesn't come in the first human lives. It
No,
takes a
you are
long.
very crude, ignorant,
That's
idiot.
right. Yeah. So when that is there, there's no psychic presence. It's
So
a question
psychic
of
presence is the Chetana.
divine Chetana. Not only Chetana. Chetana is there everywhere. The
Ah,
consciousness is there even in the stone. It is there in your body. It is there in your vital. Okay. I sent you that consciousness. Remember, if you remember, read that carefully. The consciousness is there everywhere. Chetana is there everywhere.
ah.
Even in a stone, you may feel that Chetana is not there, but it is there, sleeping. Okay, there's a gradation. Okay, so what Jasmine is saying is absolutely correct, but only I give it a slight, not twist, but twirl. Okay, I add one more to begin with. Okay, only the soul presence. Essentially, you are divine, but you have to develop it. Okay? It's like an idea, okay, which has to be executed and brought into reality. The soul is the essential possibility of the psychic developing. Okay, all human beings don't have a psychic being. That's very clear. Okay, in fact, I'll tell you something very striking. Okay, some human beings don't even have a psychic being. They have only a soul. Mother identified some people here in the ashram. She said, in fact, I told you a story also once, if you remember. We used to have, uh, photography, international photography exhibitions. Okay, and she came to inaugurate the photographic exhibition the first time. It was in the now what is our laboratory opposite the PED office by the side of guest house. You know that is now a laboratory, but when we got the building first, it was a for a exhibition hall. Okay, and there the pictures were put up. Mother came in and saw the picture of a beautiful child, a face of a child, and she turned to the judges. Okay, Robida was there, Venkatesh was there, and maybe Vidyavrat also was there. And she said, "Why have you chosen this picture?" And they said, "Mother, it's a beautiful picture, lovely picture, photograph, technically good. And look at the child smiling." Mother said, "Not smiling, but beautiful child." Mother said, this child has no psychic being." Okay, so the idea that a psychic being is there in everybody, forget it once and for all. The man who has a psychic being is already highly developed, and the man who is conscious of his psychic being is more developed. But when the psychic being comes forward and starts purifying your being, it's already one step. But to become conscious of your psychic being is the last step. That's the most difficult of all. You may feel a psychic presence. You may be very sensitive to beauty. You may be very sensitive to certain things in the physical world. You may be disgusted with impurities. But the psychic, to realize that the psychic is there in you and identify yourself as psychic is a very difficult task. It's not easy at all. Okay? So keep that in mind. That's why I told
Hello.
you. Yes, tell me.
You know, somewhere mother has written that when you see these very, very small children, like 1 year, 2 years, and all, and the way that child looks at you with such innocence and wonder,
Yes.
she says, in such a child, you can see its psychic presence.
If it is there.
If it is there.
Yeah.
But in that innocence and that wonder with which it looks, she says you can just see that psychic presence in that child.
That's right. That's right. In fact, there are very interesting stories also of how she identified certain small children were brought to her. You know, Mona's brother, youngest brother, we used to call him Bhai. Okay, he went to Sweden and he got married and he had several children. But the first child he brought to mother. Okay, okay, he brought, and his name was Dan, D-A-N. Okay, he's still living. And mother said, this child is telling me that I have come into the physical world to only do your work. That's what she said. So, what Jasmine is saying is absolutely right, but you need a divine mother's consciousness to be able to see that. Okay? But certainly, mother's consciousness will not see the psychic presence in every child. That's not possible. Only when it is developed, she will see. Okay? So, how can you see a divine presence in a child who doesn't have a psychic presence? Don't think that all human beings have a psychic presence. No. Okay? So
we can say that we have all your students at present, those who are attending this class have a psychic presence.
that, how can I say? I can't say. Mother would have said that.
No. Means we can say that we have, means, or we realize it, or I don't know how to realize that we have a psychic presence or no. We are a psychic being also. That also means when you are telling that I'm having a doubt, how to means.
How to is yoga. That's exactly. And there are so many ways of doing yoga. The how to is very clear. It's all yoga, yogic process. There are so many different processes by which it can be done. Okay. And some people are not even interested in the psychic. They are interested only in the higher planes of consciousness. The psychic being is not the only way to do yoga. Okay. There are other ways also. There's the Jnana Yoga, there's the Bhakti Yoga, there's the Karma Yoga. There are different aspects of the what man wants to do. Someone wants to have only knowledge. Okay, there are so many different ways. So how to do the
But
question
Sri
is
Aurobindo, but mother and Sri Aurobindo both say that the safest way is to first open to the psychic being because it's there as your guide and protector.
that is, yeah, that's right. That is correct. But there are others who don't always follow what mother is saying. No? What about the Jnana Yogis? Take even the case of Raman Maharshi. He only had the experience of the self when he was a 16-year-old boy, and he is wanting only his knowledge. He is known as a Jnani. Later on, the psychic opened. That's another matter. But he didn't take the psychic path very clearly. Whereas in Ramakrishna, it was very clearly the psychic presence. He is worshipping the Divine Mother and he wants to see the Divine Mother. That's the psychic presence. But not in Raman Maharshi's case. It was purely jnana. And he concentrated. Yeah, tell me.
Ramakrishna was bhakti then, not psychic, no?
Psychic is bhakti. The psychic gives you bhakti. Not necessarily.
It also gives you gyan, no?
Afterwards, not in the beginning. Not in the beginning. The jnana is always in the higher planes of consciousness. Okay? You can get, first of all, you have to purify your instruments of knowledge. Only if you purify your instruments of knowledge, the light can come in. How can the light come into a darkness? It can't. So the psychic has to come forward, remove the darkness, then your instruments are pure, then the light can come in, and light is knowledge. Okay, and light is knowledge, jnana. So light cannot come into a dark place. And your body, mind, life is dark. Okay? So, there are a lot of discussion on the, but remember this, that's why I told you that the central being in human beings is threefold. the soul, which is essentially the seed, the potential divine element in you. And that soul, through many, many lives and through each experience of every life, slowly grows through many, many lives. In fact, the tantrics say it takes 1 lakh lives to come to the human level. In fact, very clear, even Shankara says, Narajanma Durlabha. It is very difficult to get a human birth. It's not easy. And once you get that, then slowly even several Narajanma, then you will be able to develop the soul or go to the self. So there are 3 elements. The soul, which is the undeveloped psychic being, then that psychic soul slowly develops and becomes a psychic being through many, many gradations. And finally, there is a self, which is above you, and your self does not come down into your body, mind, life ever. It remains up and supports you. So there is a difference between the self, which is always above and pure, okay, and your psychic being. There is a difference. The psychic being is the element in the body, mind, life, and it evolves. The self never evolves. It is static. Keep these basic ideas in mind. The self is static, and when you rise and go to the self, you realize that your individual self is really the universal self. That becomes the cosmic consciousness. As I told you, like these little images help. Okay, you are a grain of salt, but that grain of salt has got color, shape, size, taste. It's got very clear features. But when you put it into water, what happens? The form disappears. The ego, the form disappears. It becomes infinite. But the salt remains. So that is the real individuality. The real individuality is the self, which is infinite and eternal. Okay. When you condense that into a small, it is yourself. And the ego is a shadow of the self. It's a shadow. Okay. So you have to think and get these ideas clear in oneself. Okay, what's the time? 8:24. Let's try and finish the para. Okay, so but it all started the discussion because Pallu said that you are not tormenting your soul, you are tormenting your body, mind, life. But that also, that body, mind, life is there is a connection between that. So when you do that, it's like destroying your own instruments. You destroy your own instrument, how will it help you? It doesn't help you. Okay? So, but the Gita discourages any excess of violence done to oneself. I'm going back to the text. For the self within is really the Godhead evolving. It is Krishna, it is the divine. It has not to be troubled and tortured as the titans of the world trouble and torture, but to be increased, fostered, cherished, luminously open to a divine light and strength and joy and wideness. It is not oneself, but the band of the spirit's inner enemies that we have to discourage, expel, slay upon the altar of the growth of the spirit, Okay. These can be ruthlessly excised, whose names are desire, wrath, inequality, greed, attachment to outward pleasures and pains. By the way, attachment to even pains. Human beings are such. They sometimes even enjoy pain. There's a perversion. That also is there in human beings. Srivda is not adding that without any meaning. Attachment to outward pleasures and pains. It is a very interesting thing. It goes into psychology. The cohort is a small part of the army. Maybe about 20 or 30 or 40 soldiers. That's a cohort of usurping demons that are the cause of the soul's errors and sufferings. So these are the cause of the soul's errors and sufferings. Now see very clearly, if the soul is divine, how can there be error and suffering? So Pallu, note that the soul's errors and sufferings.
So how is it possible? I didn't understand. Why the soul can't have errors? No, it is the body, mind and life which makes the errors.
Yeah, but the soul is identified with the body mind. Don't forget that. When we use the word
Okay.
identification, you have to understand.
Okay.
Okay, you are constantly thinking that you are the body mind life. These should be regarded not as part of oneself, but as intruders and perverters of the self's real and diviner nature. These have to be sacrificed in the harsher sense of the word. Whatever pain in going, they may throw by reflection on the consciousness of the seeker. By the way, in Savitri, he says that some of these desires and all that which are there, sometimes you have to uproot them from their bleeding roots. The image is so strong. So sometimes you have to do that. Violently you have to remove. But what do you have to remove? Here, the desire you have to remove, not punish your body. Okay? The desire and attachment you have to remove. And how
But
do you
then
do
it
that?
becomes a punishment to the body, no? If you remove the
No, no,
desire.
no, not the body. No. Punishment of the body is you are starving it and you are giving it pain. Have you seen that film, the Da Vinci Code? Have you seen that film?
No.
Yeah.
If you've seen that film, you will see how the man was torturing himself. Okay,
Yeah.
the Christian. So in the Christian tradition, they do that. Even in India, they do that. They lie on a bed of nails. They try to kill the vital. So Srimdo says very clearly, the vital is not to be killed. Okay? You have to kill the desire, not the body or the vital. You don't have to kill the vital.
You know, during Moram time,
Hmm.
the Muslims, they torture themselves,
That's right.
they whip themselves and what not to mourn for what happened to Muhammad.
Yeah, that's right. They try to identify themselves with them. Okay, this is also something in Christianity also. In the Philippines, okay, there's a festival where they actually put themselves on the cross to identify themselves with the suffering of Christ. But there is no need to identify yourself with the suffering. It is better to identify yourself with the pleasures, okay? There's a very interesting letter of Sirindol where someone is saying, I understand that suffering helps to purify the being. Okay. So should I welcome the sufferings? Because they help to purify the being. So Srenda says very clearly, there is no need for inviting the sufferings. You will have plenty of them in your own. In the course of your sadhana, you will get plenty of them. It's not necessary to invite them. That is, so this is exactly what you have to understand, realize. Okay, so always identify yourself with the higher parts of your being, and not the lower. It is good to say, neti neti. I am not the body. I am not the vital. I am not the. Don't identify yourself with it and make it suffer. No, I am not this. It is something imposed on me from outside. And Srirendra says something very interesting. He says that if you consider that these attachment and desires are coming from outside and not from within me, it becomes easier to throw out. Because when somebody is coming from outside, you can always say no to it. So he says, try and see all these things coming to you from outside. And it is true that they come from outside. Because all these things are there floating about in the vital atmosphere, in the physical atmosphere. We are absorbing things from the universe at all the levels, no? At the physical level, at the vital level, and the ideas, and everywhere. Okay. At the physical level, we are taking in food from the universe. Okay, we are putting physically, we are taking food from the universe. We are interacting with the universe. Vitally, other people's emotions, other people's energies, other people's vibrations enter into you, and you feel that it's your own, but you're not conscious of it. Other people's ideas also enter into your mind. And in fact, Srivendra says very clearly that the newspapers, when you read a newspaper, you feel, this is news, and you believe what it is. 90% of the time it's a falsehood. It's all political news which is falsehood. In fact, there used to be a, which is now the fruit room in the ashram, by the side of the notice boards. There the newspapers used to be kept. And mother had given the name to that room, the room of falsehood. Okay. So when we read something, we immediately have a tendency to believe that. So It's coming from outside. Ideas are coming from outside. Emotions are coming from outside. You have to put a watchman outside your vital and your mind. You have to put a watchman and allow only those thoughts and those emotions which you want them to enter into you. Just like food, no? Harmful foods we don't eat or we should not eat. So exactly in the same way you have to do the same. So this is what Sridhar is saying. These should not be regarded as part of oneself, but as intruders and perverters of the self's real and divine nature. These have to be sacrificed in the harsher sense of the word. Whatever pain in going, they may throw by reflection on the consciousness of the seeker. So the pain is felt by the body, mind, life, and the body, mind, life throws its pain on the consciousness of the seeker. So slowly, you lose your identification with body, mind, life, the soul becomes free. That is the liberation. When the soul is identifying itself with the body, mind, life, there is anxiety, there is fear, there is suffering. But the moment you lose your identification with body, mind, life, there is no suffering for you. That's a Buddhistic solution, if you remember. Okay? So, we have got some time, so we can read one more small para. But the true essence of sacrifice. Tarika read
Shall
this
I
one.
read?
Yeah, read.
But the true essence of sacrifice is not self-immolation, it is self-giving. Its object not self-effacement, but self-fulfillment. Its method not self-mortification, but a greater life, not self-mutilation, but a transformation of our natural human parts into divine members, not self-torture, but a passage from a lesser satisfaction to a greater ananda. There is only one thing painful in the beginning to a raw or turbid part of the surface nature. It is the indispensable discipline demanded, the denial necessary for the merging of the incomplete ego. But for that, there can be speedy and enormous compensation in the discovery of a real, greater, or ultimate completeness in others, in all things, in the cosmic oneness, in the freedom of the transcendent self and the spirit, in the rapture of the touch of the divine. Our sacrifice is not a giving without any return or any fruitful acceptance from the other side. It is an interchange between the embodied soul and conscious nature in us and the eternal spirit. For even though no return is demanded, yet there is the knowledge deep within us that a marvelous return is inevitable. The soul knows that it does not give itself to God in vain. Claiming nothing, it yet receives the infinite riches of the divine power and presence.
It's a beautiful para, where he is explaining exactly very clear. Yes. But the true essence of sacrifice is not self-immolation. He is repeating what he said earlier. Okay? The true sacrifice is not something painful. It should be something happy. In the beginning, it's not possible, but you have to try to do that. It is self-giving, but we don't give ourselves easily because the ego is there in us, and the ego is very much stuck. It wants only its I and minus and mine. So that is the whole problem. Self-giving is not easy in the beginning. Its object is not self-effacement. You don't have to give away everything. Self-effacement is not necessary, but self-fulfillment. Ultimately, not suffering, but enjoyment will be there. Its method, not self-mortification, but a greater life. The idea of sacrifice is to not deprive you of anything, but to get everything back. But a greater life, not self-mutilation, not even mortification, not even mutilation. Don't even injure yourself, but a transformation of our natural human parts into divine members. Not self-torture, but a passage from a lesser satisfaction to a greater ananda. That is why Sri says, do everything with patience. Don't be in a impatient hurry and don't do anything violently. Aspire calmly, quietly. You can aspire intensely, but there should be no impatience in the intensity. The intensity should be there In fact, he says something very interesting. He says your aspiration should be of such a quality that your effort will be, I want the result today itself. But the attitude will be that even if my effort takes 100 years to succeed, I don't mind. So there should be a combination of intensity and calmness. Very difficult. That's what he says. Okay. So passage from a lesser satisfaction to a greater ananda. You have to be very, very patient with yourself. There is only one thing. By the way, if you remember, right in the beginning of our synthesis, he says that there are 4 things which are necessary, which are the, if you remember. And you remember the last one? So first is utsaha, if you remember. Okay, one is utsaha. Then what are the others? You remember? One is utsaha is your enthusiasm for the thing. Then the last one is time, if you remember. Okay.
Kal.
Yeah, kala, time. You have to be very, very patient. You can't be impatient. Okay, so that's it. The 4 things. You remember what they are? The 4 things.
What is 2 and 3?
Pardon?
What is 2
Huh.
and 3?
That's what I'm trying to remember. Because now I'm so much into the sacrifice that I'm wondering. What is it? 1 second. I think it is there in the system. The synthesis of the systems. What the 4H? Yeah, 4H, page 53. Okay, Shastra, Utsaha, Guru, and Kala.
Kal. Yes.
Yeah. So Kala is the last. You must be very, very patient. Okay, the Shastra helps. Utsaha, your own effort, and Guru. All these things help. And the last is Kala. You must not grudge the time. You must always give enough time for things to mature. Don't be in a hurry. Okay. So this is what he is saying. So now I complete. We got 1 or 2 minutes. I'll complete the para. Okay. Our sacrifice is not a giving without any return. Oh, okay. I'll go a little higher up. There is only one thing painful in the beginning to a raw and turbid part of the surface nature. Surface nature, your body, mind, life. And note, it is turbid and raw in the beginning. Okay? Your instruments are raw and turbid. Turbid, dirty, okay? Full of mud of the surface nature. It is the indispensable discipline demanded, the denial necessary for the merging of the incomplete ego. The incomplete ego, when it merges itself with the universe, it becomes complete. Okay? Note the word merge, incomplete, and ego. Ego is incomplete because it is focused only on itself. But when it becomes complete, it merges into the universe. So, but for that, there can be a speedy and enormous compensation in the discovery of a real, greater, and ultimate completeness in others, in all things, in the cosmic oneness, in the freedom of the transcendent self and spirit, in the rapture of the touch of the divine. What you are giving up, don't think you will end up empty. You will end up full. That's what he's saying. And what is the fullness consisting of? Enormous compensation in the discovery of a real, greater, and ultimate completeness in others. You feel yourself to be in everybody else. In all things also. You will find yourself in everything. In the cosmic oneness, the cosmic consciousness. In the freedom of the transcendent self. You become free in the rapture of the touch of the divine. All these things come because you have given up your limitations and you are getting the infinite. Our sacrifice is not a giving without any return or any fruitful acceptance from the other side. It's an interchange between the embodied soul and conscious nature in us. Purusha and Prakriti combine and become absolutely one in the air and the eternal spirit. For even though no return is demanded, Yet there is the knowledge deep within us that a marvelous return is inevitable. The soul knows that it does not give itself to God in vain. Claiming nothing, it yet receives the infinite riches of the divine power and presence. So sacrifice is not something ending in a zero. It's ending in an infinite oneness and infinite, full of possibilities, full of ananda, full of consciousness, full of power. Okay, we stop here today.
Merci Rangada. Au revoir.